The Warriors are back. They are officially back. They are now on a 3-game winning streak for the first time since November 15th. For the first time in 3 months, they are on a 3-game winning streak. And I think this winning streak is going to continue because what's happening right now to this team is very real. It's not a mirage. There are different patterns that are going on that is suggesting that this team is going to go on a major run. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the channel. Before we continue, if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button, the notification bell, and hit that like button so that this video gets out to all the Warriors fans out there. Now let's get straight to it. This was Jimmy Butler's first home game of the season since he joined the Warriors, believe it or not. All the games that he's played up to this point have been on the road. And it's funny, the Mavs actually got out to a 7-2 start early on, but the Warriors defense was able to clamp down. Kyrie Irving just couldn't get anything going in this game, starting out 0 for 5 from the field and ultimately shooting just 7 of 19 from the field. To be honest with you, I missed the first half of the first quarter. So if you notice something or anything in terms of why Kyrie got off to such a slow start, please leave it in the comment down below because I would love to know. Because this was a game on national television, I was not able to rewind back to see what happened there. But with Jimmy Butler's presence, everything has changed for this team. Even the way they run their offense, with Jimmy in there, with another elite decision maker, things flow better in the motion offense. One thing about the motion offense, and you guys know that I'm not a big fan of the motion offense by any measure, but when you have more elite, better players, better decision makers, more skilled players, more know-how guys that are in the system, the easier and the smoother the system runs because it's a read and react system. And the fact that they have Jimmy Butler in there as another guy who can not only score, but also facilitate alongside Steph Curry and Draymond Green. And then you have to think about the aura of Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler combined. Both of those guys command so much attention. Now there are other guys that are on the floor like Moses Moody and Paz who get easier opportunities and better looks. And the whole thing looks completely different. You know, I am waiting to see what this is going to look like once they run into teams with more size and are better players in the front court and are more aggressive from an offensive standpoint, and how that affects and changes the complexion of the Warriors' new starting lineup. Because there's no NBA team that wants to start small all day and night long term. Even OKC Thunder, as we know, is one of those teams that like to go small. But the fact of the matter is, they were missing their bigs for a chunk of the season. At first, they didn't have Isaiah Hartenstein, and then they were missing Chet Holmgren for a chunk of the season. Now that those guys are both available, OKC Thunder have actually now gone to a pretty big lineup where both of those bigs are in the starting lineup. See, this is what good basketball minds do. If you have bigger bodies and you're able to go to bigger lineups, that's what any sensible coach would do. Having said that, the Mavs are literally out of big bodies, which is why they're also going small. And well, that's the perfect scenario for the Warriors in this current starting lineup. But bottom line, the bench unit starts coming in. Steph Curry is able to go off and they're able to create separation in that first quarter, getting out to a 33-18 start, which is really wonderful. This is something that is very rare for the Warriors in terms of starting the first quarters off really well and getting off to a great start immediately. They're almost always coming back from being down and having to climb their way back up. So the first quarters are almost always a deficit or a wash. So the second quarter starts, and as you guys know by now, the rotations are pretty set. To begin the second and the fourth quarter, Steve puts out a bigger lineup featuring Paz, Moody, Jimmy Butler, Draymond, and Post. And that lineup has pretty much outplayed the other team just about every single time. You know, there were some things early on that was a little bit frustrating in terms of Paz and Moody and their decision making. There was one particular play in that second quarter where Paz was driving into the paint and Post was wide open in that right corner, but Paz ignores him, takes a contested layup and misses it. And then next time down, Moses Moody is in transition. He's in a one-on-one situation with one guy guarding him and two Warriors players trailing the play. And all Moody had to do was go up, get his man up in the air, and drop the ball off to somebody, and it's a wide open dunk. But instead of doing that, he tries to finish the play by himself and isn't able to do anything, is barely able to hold on to a loose ball, and then he ends up going up for a shot by himself, misses it. Jimmy Butler is able to get to it, and Butler is able to reorganize and find a cutting post for the dunk. So those are the little disconnected plays that are going to show up once you get into playing dominant teams in the playoffs, where plays like that is going to affect the overall connectivity and the momentum of the game. But Jimmy Butler's presence is just able to erase a lot of mistakes and a lot of bad things that happen on the floor. He's the ultimate calming presence, a guy who just is able to break the momentum of the other team with the shot making and the playmaking of a first option caliber player. I mean, you talk about Jimmy Butler-centric lineups, and you talk about Curry-centric lineups, and well, at this juncture of Steph Curry's career, where he's 37 years old, you can make the argument that Jimmy-centric lineups so far have been more effective and more consistent than Steph-centric lineups. And that is insane for me to say and acknowledge, but the truth is the truth. Jimmy Butler has just been absolutely incredible, and he's finding some really great chemistry with Post, who wasn't really involved enough in the first 2 to 3 minutes of that second quarter. So of course, after Butler gets Post his first 2 points of the game on a dunk, a couple of possessions down, Jimmy Butler is creating in that mid-range area inside the paint. Quentin Post goes from this end of the floor to that end of the floor. His man essentially forgets about him, and Butler, of course, draws a couple of guys and finds Post in that opposite corner, and he's wide open, and he cans the three-point shot. And those shots that Post is able to convert on is where the Warriors and that second unit is create this wonderful separation from the other team's second units. But ultimately, that second quarter ends up being a wash. Once again, to close that second quarter, Steve elects to go to that weird, funky, nonsensical lineup, that 3-guard lineup of Steph Curry, Pods, Buddy Hield next to Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green. And it's a 3-guard, 2-forward lineup rather than a 2-guard, 3-forward lineup. I just don't understand why Steve is doing this to Moses Moody, and I don't know why he's giving Buddy Hield this opportunity. To close the second quarter is pretty important because that's going to dictate the overall outcome of what happens in the first half. So why would he give that opportunity to Buddy Hield, who is not a good enough defender to be forming a 3-guard lineup and pretending that Buddy Hield is a small forward, when you have Moses Moody, who is a starter, and he should be given the opportunity to close up the second quarter? It just continues to not make any sense to me. These words, I literally said the exact same thing the video before, and I'm probably not going to stop anytime soon until this gets updated and upgraded. I think right now, that is one of the biggest problems that the Warriors have remaining to solve. But I would also imagine that when Jonathan Kuminga comes back into the equation, he is going to end up eating those minutes instead of Buddy Hield. So likely the lineup is going to be Steph Curry, Pot, Jonathan Kuminga, Jimmy Butler, and Draymond Green. And I can live with that a lot better than Buddy Hield. As a matter of fact, that has the potential to be a thriving and a possible closing lineup. Speaking of Kuminga, he scrimmaged for the first time yesterday. He'll be missing the next home game as well, but on the next 5-game road trip that is coming up, that's when we may be seeing Jonathan Kuminga for the first time in quite a while. Anyway, back to the game. The third quarter comes, and that's when all the fun starts to happen. Steph Curry is going off. The guy has 16 points in that third quarter. And you know, the Mavs have been doing some funky, funny stuff. They've been doing a little bit of trash talking. They're doing a little bit of this, PJ Washington in particular. So Steph Curry sees PJ Washington in front of him late into that third quarter, and he launches the long-range bomb, and Steph Curry does something that he's never done up to this point, which is to do the night-night celebration in the third quarter, man. He's never done it that early because obviously third quarter, the game is never over. But he needed his get back against PJ Washington for mimicking and mocking the night-night celebration. And to be honest with you, I think that was a good time to do it because, like I said earlier, the unit of Pods, Moody, Jimmy Butler, Draymond, and Post to start the second and the fourth quarters have typically been thriving and outplaying the other team. So if the Warriors have a sizable lead ending the third quarter going into the fourth quarter, I have a feeling we're going to start seeing a lot of nights where Steph Curry ends up resting in that fourth quarter, because the first half of that fourth quarter with that unit is going to end up creating more separation from the separation they already have when the third quarter ended. And yeah, the game's going to be over like it ended up being tonight. The Warriors led by as many as 29 points in that fourth quarter, and Steph Curry never had to come back into this game. He only played 29 minutes and scored 30 points in that span. This feels like old times. You know, back in the 15-16 season, back in the good old days, when the Warriors had a 15-point lead going into the fourth quarter, they never lost. Never lost. That was their record. Jimmy Butler, plus 28 and 28 minutes of play. A positive every single minute that he plays. 18 points on 9 shots. This guy is preposterous. It is scary hours with Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler playing the game of basketball together side by side. This is just ridiculous. As you guys know, I still want the Warriors to go and pick up that secondary POA guy, if possible, before the buyout deadline. And I'm still concerned about the play of the kids. You're relying ultimately on a second-year player in Potts and Moses Moody, who just hasn't gotten enough playing time over the years. And I'm just not sure that he has enough experience and enough know-how and enough fundamental basketball in him for the Warriors to be able to rely on him in the playoffs against the best teams on the planet. Imagine Moses Moody and Potts are starting in the finals for the Warriors. I mean, that just sounds like a lot to me. And to be honest with you, I just think that the Warriors have not explored their most optimal lineups just yet. It's just that right now, Moses Moody and Potts is the new iteration that the Warriors are going with, and this is what it currently looks like. But the absolute best iterations of the lineups that the Warriors can put out there once they have Jonathan Kuminga back, and once they consider the possibility of Trayce Jackson-Davis back into the equation for defensive purposes, because yes, in the playoffs, you're gonna need that. You play against a giant team like the Memphis Grizzlies at some point in the playoffs, for example. These really small lineups from the get-go and all this stuff, that's not necessarily going to cut it, right? We have not seen the best iterations of this team just yet. And that is something to be really excited about. It's just on Steve Kerr and his coaching staff to figure that out as time goes. And to be fair, given how serious this situation is, now that Jimmy Butler is in the equation, Steve has made some adjustments, such as taking Buddy Hield and Quinton Post out of the starting lineup, keeping Post with that second unit, going to bigger lineups with those second units to begin the second and the fourth quarter, where those lineups have absolutely thrived. Even in tonight's game, while we still see a little small segment of those 4-guard lineups here and there, Steve also switches it up for those Steph Curry-centric lineups where GP2 is on the floor, and yes, Buddy Hield is also on the floor, but now he puts Guy Santos at the 4 next to Kevon Looney, and no longer does it look absolutely tiny. Now you have more guys with more energy, guys that are fundamentally sound at what they do, GP2 at POA and Guy Santos at the 4 grabbing rebounds next to Kevon Looney, and now you have less holes that you have to deal with from a defensive standpoint. And you know what it is with me. I am a perfectionist. I look to completely and utterly maximize everything possible for this organization, this team, the roster, the lineups, quarter by quarter. That's just what I do. I am a perfectionist. Maybe it's the Korean in me. Maybe it's the fact that when I got a 97 on a math test when I was in 4th grade, my dad looked at that test score and said, why is this not 100%? Why is this a 97%? This is how I grew up. This is how my mind works. I want perfection. So when people come at me talking about, oh, you're not happy even when the Warriors win a game. Oh, I'm happy when the Warriors win a game, generally speaking. But the game of basketball always has the good and the bad. And there's a reason the Warriors end up giving up a certain amount of points to any given team. And it's about how they end up giving up those points. And there's always things to be corrected and improve upon. From a team standpoint, from a each unit standpoint, and from an each individual standpoint. And those are the nuances that I go over on this channel. Having said that, we have to give some praise to Moses Moody and Pods. These two have fit next to the veterans like a glove. Pods tonight, 17 points and 13 rebounds, plus 30 in 30 minutes. And he even shot 3 of 5 from the three-point line. You know, for all the little fundamental cracks here and there, he is a demon on the floor when it comes to just being everywhere. His tendency to take charges has lessened this season because he suffered a lot of injuries, a lot of hits to the face. I'm sure that has a psychological effect on him to some degree. But tonight as well, he took a charge, and 13 rebounds for a guard of his size is absolutely incredible. He's always on the glass. Sometimes he fights his own teammates for those rebounds. Maybe he can cut some of those things out. But from an overall standpoint, he's always in there and putting up a fight, and you really have to appreciate that physical aspect of his game. And Moses Moody plus 16 in 27 minutes of play, once again making an impact from a scoring standpoint. 14 points, and guess what? The Warriors are 9-0 when Moses Moody is in the starting lineup. When Moses Moody is in the starting lineup, the Warriors are 9-0. That has to be considered. You know, before last season started, when they first got Chris Paul and all this stuff, and there was all this drama surrounding Klay Thompson and the team's inability to re-sign him before the season started, well, the way I thought about it after seeing Klay Thompson's performance against the Lakers in the playoffs, I'm just like, you know what? I think this guy is a little bit washed at this point, and in the playoffs, he's just not going to be performing the way that he had been able to once upon a time. And I'm just like, well, if he doesn't want to stay with the Warriors and the Warriors don't want to cap themselves by signing him to like some large contract or something along those lines, I'm just like, either Potts or Moody is right there to take his place in that shooting guard spot. And obviously to start this season, that didn't come to fruition, especially with Melton on board. And Melton was just that veteran guy who has all the know-hows and that POA defense that he provides next to Wiggins that made the Warriors way better when he's in that starting lineup. So you have to prioritize a guy like that over Moses Moody and Potts. But now that Potts and Moody are both getting that opportunity, and it's vital that a guy like Jimmy Butler is in there to make all of this work. But the conditions that are necessary have been met for a guy like Moses Moody to be in that starting lineup and absolutely thrive for this team. And yes, when they mess up and criticism is warranted, I'm always going to be there to do that. But at the same time, when they're thriving and playing really well, you have to give the credit where it's due and absolutely acknowledge that these two have been really great for this team since being inserted into the starting lineup. And although I see even a better path with one bigger body in there to completely and utterly maximize this situation, I can no longer criticize the fact that they're going small and taxing Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green until we see them against a bigger team where they're actually being overtaxed and this is affecting the outcome of the team. But everything is clicking on all cylinders. I love the individual performances of each guy in that starting lineup. And then I love the fact that connectors like Guy Santos is in the equation. Kevon Looney is in there. Although he hasn't necessarily been great in recent games, he's still a positional need and he fulfills a role for this team. And Guy Santos, I mean, the dude had 6 rebounds in the first 5 minutes of the game. And he really changed how that first quarter was playing out with multiple second chance opportunities, 3 blocks even in this game. I really wish more people would appreciate the presence of a guy like Guy Santos who's willing to do all the fundamental things, all the winning plays, all the hustle work, and all the connective plays. Every winning team needs a player like Guy Santos. You got GP2 connecting the POA, you got Quinton Post being a specialist and being a 3-point threat and spacing the floor and all these things. And I like the fact that Buddy Hield got limited minutes tonight, wasn't really hitting his shots 1 for 4 from the field, only played 18 minutes. And this is what I'm saying about Buddy Hield, is to limit his minutes when he doesn't have it going, and certainly don't feature him to end the second quarter. And when he does have it going, sure, ride the hot hand. But the fact that he played only 18 minutes tonight and he was with all these elite lineups, so he was a plus 19 on the floor, but Steve didn't play him to the ground. 18 minutes sounds just right. And I figure once Kuminga comes back, Hield is going to lose even more opportunities. But man, there was a lot of trash talking going on the floor. Jimmy Butler gave Kyrie Irving the too small sign after taking him in the post, and what allowed him the space to ISO in the post against Kyrie Irving, which is kind of a mismatch, is because Quinton Post was on the other side of the floor and spacing the floor, and his man couldn't fully commit to a double team against Jimmy, knowing that if he does, Jimmy's gonna find Post in that corner and they're gonna be punished with a 3-point shot. And that play happened right after Moses Moody actually blocked Kyrie Irving's layup attempt at the rim, and you could literally hear Moses Moody yelling, "Give me that shit." So a lot of trash talking by the Warriors in this game. It was so much fun. Ultimately, the Warriors win by 24 points, take care of business against the Mavs, and now the Warriors are just half a game behind the Mavs in the standings, and the Warriors must continue to climb up the ladder so that they become a definitive playoff team, which I, at this point, have no doubt that they're going to be. Let's see what kind of a record the Warriors can compile in the final 25 games left in the season. And let's see how the chemistry continues to develop, because remember, these are just the beginning days of Jimmy Butler on the Warriors and this era of Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler. And I keep forgetting to talk about Draymond Green. He's the guy that connects it all and make it make sense at that center spot. 13 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists, just overall play across the board. The ultimate connector guy, the glue guy, the guy who keeps everything together from a defensive standpoint. But yes, the Warriors are now 5-1 in the Jimmy Butler era. And to be honest with you, let's be real, they really should be 6-0 because the Warriors got robbed the last time they played the Mavs. But yes, this is a glorious time right now if you're a Warriors fan. Congratulations to all of you that have stuck around through all the garbage and horrible times when the Warriors were basically a bottom 5 team in the league for a chunk of this season. We suffered through it. We endured through it. We had to listen to other people in the Warriors fan base talking about how Steph Curry is washed. Oh, we're done. Even in the comment section, some people were saying that stuff, and I'm just like, keep that energy and let's see what you have to say when things get fixed up one way or another. Steph Curry is washed. Where are you now? But it's okay. I forgive you. I understand the frustrations. I understand that sometimes all you can see is what's going on the floor, and you kind of forget about the fact that the guy was playing with a sprained thumb in his shooting hand, and he didn't have to play through that. He could just sat out for the last month or so with that injury. Especially with the team down in the dumps and losing games anyway, Steph Curry played through it all, never sat down because of it. And we do not appreciate his love of the game enough. But like I said, exciting times are here, and I'm really looking forward to the remaining games this season. We have suffered enough. It's time to enjoy the games that are coming up. It's time to have fun like we're supposed to have when we're watching the game of basketball with Steph Curry on the team and now with Jimmy Butler on the team. That's all I got for now. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.